Welcome to Training Unleashed, the show that will help you design and deliver training that's off the chain and will make a difference. Now, here's your host, Evan Hackel.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to what I think is going to be a very interesting edition of Training Unleashed. Before we get going, I want to thank our sponsors, C-Suite TV and C-Suite Radio. Without them, I wouldn't have a show. We've got a really great guest. His name's Brian Connors. He's an educator, consultant, industry advisor. And what I really like about Brian is he's really committed to training and helping and supporting other people, because unlike most of our other guests, he has actually no giveaway and no takeaway, zero, other than a desire to contribute. And so, Brian, I want to start off and just ask you to just maybe share, because you have an interesting background, just briefly what you do, because it's not something that I could simply explain.
No, definitely have one of those unique positions. Well, Evan, first of all, thank you very much for having me and inviting me to the show. I know we're gonna have a great conversation today, but yeah, I do have a unique position. So I have multiple hats and multiple roles, but a few of my main primary roles is I'm the Bacardi director. So I'm the faculty director for Bacardi Center of Excellence at Florida International University, which is part of the Chaplin School of Hospitality and Tourism Management. And inside the Chaplin School, I'm also the Senior Director of Food and Beverage Innovation. That means I come up with crazy ideas, but I also get them done. And the other part of that is with my family company called Connors Davis Hospitality, where we do industry advising and consultancy, and that's really kind of grown through the years where, like a lot of us that are listening and watching this program now, traveling and to train isn't always the top priority anymore. So we're really looking at new ways of engaging and developing people, but we still have our foot, mine particularly in the industry, and still do some consultancy for restaurant groups and for beverage programs internationally, really.
So I think you kind of hinted on something that I think is a good way to start, which is, what are the changes that you're seeing in training, based on, the world completely changing with COVID and all of that? How's that impacted your clients? What things can you sort of pull from that as advice for our listeners?
Yeah, a great question and a great way to start the conversation. Particularly in the past 2 years in the training space, wow, we've seen a lot change very, very quickly. And what we've learned is that, well, we can pretty much do anything anywhere faster than we ever thought before. Like a lot of your listeners, yourself, Evan, I spent more time in trains, planes, and automobiles and ships around the world developing people. And I'm at the point in my career right now, personally and professionally, I don't want to travel as much anymore. And this last 2 years has taught us new ways of creativity, new ways of kind of transferring knowledge and then kind of taking it to the next level. And what do I mean by that? We got quickly good at Zoom, quickly good at Teams or whatever platform you're using. But now, there's this amazing opportunity to have that as part of your overall training strategy and ways to reinforce learned behaviors or learn whatever your outcome is going to be. And that's where we're seeing a big trend. I think there's always going to be value in face-to-face. This goes for higher education. This goes to any adult education or any type of people development you want to talk about, because we need that. We need that kind of interaction. As my good friend, Dr. Chris Muller said, we got to smell them. But where we have an amazing opportunity now with the use of technology and where we're seeing things going is, number one, as a reinforcement tool for that face-to-face learning opportunity, whatever platform you're comfortable with, but also this greater level of creativity of, again, using video, using audio. We were both talking before your show of the popularity of podcasts taking off, but this is another great way to kind of transfer information and to share knowledge, which is fantastic. So I looked at the last 2 years personally, in my own world at Florida International University. We launched and created Bacardi Teach, which is now changing into what's called Future Proof, where we're seeing the beverage industry, particularly the adult beverage industry, wanting a bigger or larger demand for that type of technology. And we're looking at, just as we're talking about today, we're using the technology, the platforms of video, the platforms of audio, real-time kind of learning, and then also reinforcing with kind of the face-to-face educational opportunity. So I think at the end of the day, and we all know this that are listening and watching, that the hybrid model is here to stay.
Well, the hybrid model, or sometimes referred to as blended learning, I think I always have thought has been critically important. What I think is interesting is that virtual talking to each other. I mean, you're in Florida, I am in Massachusetts, but I'm looking at you and connecting with you almost as if we were in the same room. And I think that there was a hesitancy to use a Zoom or other products. And I think now what you're going to see is, yes, live training needed. Smell them. I've never heard that before, but I love it. But I also think you're going to see a lot more virtual training, virtual coaching, and that e-learning, which is incredibly important, maybe not as big a percentage of the learning time as it used to be. And I got an e-learning company, by the way, when I say this, but we do teach a lot and create a lot of virtual leader-led training now, and what these platforms can do are really incredible. Let's talk about what you're doing at Bacardi, because it sounds very interesting. And let me just start with, you mentioned a couple programs. Love to know more about them and what the impetus was. What was the idea behind the starting of them?
Absolutely. The Bacardi Center of Excellence is an incredibly unique learning, for lack of better terms, opportunity. About a little over 2.5 years ago now, Bacardi North America teamed up with Florida International University Chaplin School and said, hey, let's be the first of its kind, where we are a family-owned adult spirits industry that will want to develop the next level of hospitality learners. Now, Evan, there are other spirit companies in the US that do stuff with other institutions. Mainly that's science-based. In other words, how does this oak affect this spirit, for example, or how long does this aging, or the percentage of what's called the angel share, and they do a lot of great stuff. But where we are differing, and we are really kind of the trendsetter, but also the institution to watch, is that we're the first hospitality. So we're looking at it from the people side, the people focus more. So with that in mind, we created the first of its kind spirits curriculum, where we have courses not only in understanding the product itself, which we have the art and science, but also the marketing, the distribution, and so forth, because that's a lot different than other industries. We already have an incredibly robust wine and beer program, so it's very easy for us to kind of transition to that. Outside of just the curriculum itself, as I mentioned earlier, we created Bacardi Teach. That is going to be kind of next gen of that is going to be called Future Proof, because again, we're seeing these high level of demand. Now, with Bacardi Teach, we launched it months after COVID hit. The dean and as well as the regional president, Pete Carr, said, let's do something. So our team, including Team Enterprises, which is one of the marketing arms of Bacardi, we got together, and we were able to probably take a project, Evan, that probably, you understand e-learning, 6 months, and did it in about a month and a half. We got incredibly creative on how our approach was. And what we saw was that at that timing, we were right on, because people needed it. They wanted to have that, because you're at home. What a great opportunity to gain certifications, and industry driven, no matter what industry you're in, certifications are now seeing more of kind of a response of positivity, where, we were able then to say, if you're able to do 5 of our modules, and we really designed our modules for modern learners. What do I mean by that? We have a 5-minute kind of get your feet wet, for lack of better terms, and then a 10 and or 12 to 15 minute for a little bit of a deeper dive. At the end of those modules, and they all kind of work together, you're able to take a badge certification. As a lot of us knows, that adult badge style learning is also critical, because it's something that's very quick response, resume ability, LinkedIn, social, that type of stuff. But at the end of 5 successful courses, with obviously assessments at each one, they're able to get the Bacardi Center of Excellence certification of completion. Wow. Now, we are now seeing hundreds of these completed, thousands upon thousands of courses taken. I think we measured the amount of hits on the website, or just views, was in the hundreds, I think just shy of 500,000. This was in a very short period of time. And throughout this time, we said, all right, well, as the industry began to kind of reopen, the demand was still there. And better yet, the demand now to upskill to new levels. So particularly in our hospitality space, and you have, an individual says, I really want to take that next step, say in the beverage, and right now they're a bartender or some type of service provider, and they want to take those next steps. Well, in this industry, particularly, knowledge is key. And if you want to take that next step from bartender to industry professional, or let's say brand ambassador, you really got to be knowledgeable. So that's kind of where we're taking this program next. So with the support of Bacardi North America, with the support of Team Enterprises down here out of Florida, we're going to be launching that in the coming months to new levels. And that's what I was talking about earlier with that hybrid type model that we're going to be using, is that we'll do a roadshow as well. So we'll have these learning platforms for people to kind of engage with, very much community driven as well, because again, tech goes a long way, as you know, Evan, that we've got to be doubling down in our tech space as well. And then from our tech space, really looking at where we're able to take those levels of certification. And what do I mean by that is that we'll travel to major markets like Boston, where you are, major markets such as New York City, let's say to Atlanta, to Houston, and so forth, with our roadshow to be able then to do real-time certifications. This will be kinesthetic or hands-on certification. So that's going to be kind of cool.
It sounds like you're training, though, more than what Bacardi is. You're really educating people on hospitality.
Yep.
And the naysayers would say, okay, you teach somebody these skills, and then they can go off and sell Kettle One vodka. I'm just picking a brand.
Sure. Wrong brand, but okay.
No, but no. My point, it was intentionally for it to be the wrong brand, right?
Yep.
And I want to be clear when I ask this question that I totally support what you're doing, when it will sound like I don't. But Bacardi's teaching an industry, but maybe they're going to teach people that will then take that information and not necessarily support Bacardi. So why are you educating an industry versus just educating people on Bacardi?
Sure. All ships will rise with the incoming tide. And if you think about it that way, and that would never be part of the Bacardi culture. I think they have one of the best corporate cultures that they have there, that they believe that, no, we're all going to win at the end with education. Competitors have been doing, this type of thing for a while. We're just going to take a different approach, particularly between FIU and Bacardi, where we will be that hospitality centric. We will be that kind of people centric thing. And it's not just about, throwing a drink over a bar. It's about the overall experience now. And that's where we're kind of really training these moments. But it's going to be a lot of our conversation today is using these modern techniques to engage these modern learners. And I say modern learners, you got to think of this Gen Zs. This generation that we have now, particularly in the classroom with the Chaplin School, is a lot different, Evan, when you and I went to college. A lot different. And that also goes for industry, and look at a lot of the challenges we have, particularly like many industries, but the hospitality industry, boy, we got some labor issues. People did not want to come back to work in those traditional jobs, those traditional roles. And there was a lot of studies done, from safety to but one of the big things that always resonated was trajectory growth of someone's, where they're going, what's the succession plan, how they're going to get there. So tools like this is beneficial to everyone and the industry as a whole.
Yeah, I totally agree. Raise the tide. It's going to be good for Bacardi. I also think that people remember, I told you this when we talked before, but I'll share it with the audience. I toured Bacardi, I hate to say it, 40 plus years ago in Puerto Rico. And because of that one tour, I've always had a favorable view of Bacardi as a great company, great product, et cetera. And I have no doubt that the people that you're teaching are going to have a great feeling for Bacardi, because they're going to be appreciative of Bacardi investing in them. And I do think it's a huge mistake when people look so myopically at what they're doing. And there's that old joke, what if I train someone and they leave me, followed by what if I don't train them and they stay?
Mm-hmm.
And which I think is important. So you use this term I found interesting, which is future proof. Mm-hmm. So it seems like that's the next place you're going.
Yeah.
What is future proof?
So it's going to be the next gen, the next launch, our 2.0 of Bacardi Teach. We also did Bacardi Teach in its first kind of version. Not that big of a budget when all things are comparison in this new world of kind of mobile and also web-based learning. So future proof, we actually have an additional backing from the on-premise team at Bacardi North America that they saw or they see the value. That's probably a better terminology of what we've done at FIU and Bacardi for the past 2 years. Says we can take this to the next step, and that's what we're seeing. So future proof is going to be our Gen 2 of it all. That's going to be our roadshow and our kind of, and it's important when you do take, training from one level to the next, that you rebrand it, that you reposition it. Are we going to be able to utilize some of our content? Absolutely. We've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on some content, and you and I both know when you're creating high quality video content and high quality editing and sound, it ain't cheap, Evan. It ain't cheap.
No.
So we are going to obviously utilize, we're going to take the best and leave the rest. So a lot of the stuff that we use from either clips that we had to, from some pre-existing stuff that we're able to use, we're going to be creating the new stuff, and that's where Future Proof came into it. So it's a new name. So when this show launches and when your viewers listen and or watch, they'll be like, Future Proof, this is a new thing. And when I mean new, brand new.
Well, I love what you're saying, because I do think rebranding and repositioning training is important.
Yeah.
That people need to constantly be learning, and they don't, if the idea is, okay, you got to retake something you already took, that's not exciting. But future proof, no, that's interesting. I'm now interested.
Mm-hmm.
And even if it's the old stuff revisioned, redone, it makes a very big difference.
It does, and particularly in the beverage space, and this goes for spirits and beer and wine, everything else, the fundamentals really don't change year in and year out. When you have a good understanding, let's say, of tequila, Patron tequila, you understand where it comes from, Jalisco and Blue Weber and all these. Okay, great. You got those fundamentals, those building blocks. And this goes for a lot of training modules. But then where do you go next? And then when we're really pushing the level of creativity to innovation, not just a margarita, but then, okay, take that margarita cocktail to the next level. Like right now we're doing a blackberry infused margarita in our automated, or I can't say automated, in our robot called Cecilia, who is an AI, and that's the most popular drink. And our learners, our students came up with that stuff because they're actually taking different products into a new level. So that's where we're kind of also seeing that we're always, this again goes across the board on many training fronts, but the fundamentals, you never want to lose them. As a matter of fact, you always want to look for a way to reinforce them. You might be changing it around and putting a new suit on it, but you got to constantly reinforce that, because with those fundamentals, you're able to use those as a building block to that next level. And that, again, in anywhere in my career, I've seen that, that if I go back and find a new and interesting way to talk about something, well, it's just some kind of repackaging and rebranding it.
Very interesting. You used a term that, my ears just lit up, which is robot.
Yeah.
So tell us about the robot.
All right. Thank you very much. Might have been a softball there, because I was like, I can't have our conversation today without talking about Cecilia AI. So Cecilia AI is a virtual robot, if you will, that actually is a bartender, and she uses artificial intelligence, is able to communicate with guests, communicate with servers, and so forth. Like a lot of great things, Evan, I said yes when I had this meeting, but I saw the opportunity because, again, labor shortage, but also building brand awareness and getting our students engaged and getting Bacardi North America engaged. So we actually were able to launch here in the US market, Cecilia, at this year's South Beach Wine and Food Festival, which is one of the largest food festivals. Excuse me, it is the largest food festival in the US, if not the world. And Evan, she had a line down the beach for 3 days straight, on average doing about 100 cocktails an hour. That's also including the guests interacting, asking for jokes, asking her to marry her. Three guests actually called her Alexa. We don't know why, but they did. And we were able to keep all this data analytics. And it was really at the end. Now, first of all, she was also a media hit. Some of your listeners and or watchers might have saw her. We were on the Today Show. You might have saw her on Fox and Friends, CBS News carried her. We got picked up. I think, we like to measure things in this industry. We earned just shy of $120 million worth of earned media. And we had about 730 overall interactions on million, that is in the million, 730 million. So talk about just building a brand awareness. And then what we really look at this from, let's talk about our conversation, training and development side and people development. Evan, at first people thought I was nuts. Like, oh, you're getting rid of our jobs. It's like, no, you're not looking at this the right way. This is an amazing opportunity to develop people because Cecilia, as creative as she is, she talks and she tells jokes. She'll never be able to take away that human element. But what she can do is help the human element. In other words, we had her at the Miami Heat this weekend down here in Miami, and she was in one of the VIP lounges, and there's other outlets and other bars there. Those bars got busy, right? And what happened when those bars got busy? People walked right up to our robot and they started to engage. And then what they do, they started to tell their friends. So suddenly we created a different and new hospitality experience. And again, this took a lot of training, not just with our FIU learners, not just our partners at Bacardi, but also the guests. So everything from infographics to we had tour guides to help people, because it was like, a scene from Disney down here, where they take their glass, they interact, they get their cocktail, they go, ooh, ah, they had garnishes from our friends at Filthy Foods, which are absolutely amazing garnishes. And the whole thing worked. But, from a training standpoint, it was not something that happened overnight. We actually trained our students for about a week prior on a daily basis, because we also use what's called batch technology. So Cecilia was able then to text us when certain drinks were popular and certain things were running low. So I think that some of the great takeaways, besides just the media that we were able to attract, was that this AI, this artificial intelligence, was just that. It was giving us real-time information that later on you're able to use to make better decisions. The old Peter Drucker saying, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Well, we can measure it and manage it at the same time. So thank you for bringing that up, because it was an awesome success and we're incredibly proud of our students as well as our partnership with Cecilia AI.
I'll tell you, I can't tell you how many times people have said this is going to put the worker out of business. And yet, we have very little unemployment, and no technology is yet to achieve that goal. So I do think it's fun. I was in a hotel where they didn't have mini bars, but they had a kiosk that literally was parked in the lobby, would get itself on the elevator, drive, up the elevator, drive to your room, ring your door, and you would open up and whatever you ordered from this thing would be there. And that wasn't alcoholic beverages. It was more like little toiletries and things like that. But, I thought that was, awfully clever too.
Yeah, and that's going to be the new normal, and I was quoted on the Today Show saying by 2016, we're going to see this as, look at Uber, everyone took a little time to get used to that, but we're going to see this as, that's part of the service delivery system. So if it's going to be from delivery to your guest room or delivery to your front door, things have changed a whole heck of a lot in that space. And particularly in the training space, we got to be 2 steps ahead.
So we don't have a lot of time left, but I want to talk about the university affiliation, because you're not the first person that I've talked to where a university is affiliated with a for-profit company. Why the university? Why didn't Bacardi just do this all themselves?
Well, it is an actual partnership, and that's where we are setting the trend to industry. I have a dotted line in many ways to the vice president of on-premise sales. I'm in constant communication. We do strategic planning together with Bacardi, but I'm an FIU faculty member. I'm a professor first. I just happen to have this rather unique job that I still teach classes, not as many as I like to anymore. I'm a little busy, but I have this dotted line that after we wrap up today, I'll be in calls with them looking at where we're going for 2023. And it's an incredibly unique, but for someone kind of wired like I am, I absolutely love it, because it's a rather unique situation. I'll have the opportunity, the dean and I, Dr. Michael Chang, our favorite dean, we'll be heading out to the national meeting next month in Vegas with Bacardi North America. So it is a partnership. They see the value. But Evan, look at it this way from a training side. It is the best long game you can ever imagine. because you nailed it before, where our guests, our learners are going to be walking out into industry knowing more about specific brands than, quite frankly, even I do sometimes, and they just get it and they embrace it. But it is not, we're not taking a brand and throwing it over someone's head, because that never works. But when the modern learner sees the connection, we have executives in the classroom, we have brand ambassadors almost on a weekly basis in the classroom. They get it. So, even on the, we're video today, you see the classroom. This is the dedicated Bacardi Center of Excellence classroom right behind me. And it is the coolest classroom on campus. So, and everybody, even outside of our hospitality school, wants to be there. So I think, with the genuine partnership, and we all have, that illustrious skin in the game to make things work. This is a 5-year agreement. And I tell my dean all the time, and I'm very fine, if I take my foot off the throttle and we stop innovating, we stop looking at what's next and what's new, because many times, and you and I have seen this, like many of your listeners and watchers have, a big corporation, a big family corporation might give millions of dollars. Here you go, put a name on a building, and nothing happens. But today, and particularly with this partnership with Bacardi North American, it happens, and it happens fast. And I tell the dean, if I stop, the whole thing will stop. And I don't plan on stopping anytime soon, Evan. So I think we're going to be in pretty good shape.
Now, are your students involved at all in the work itself, developing the learning, developing and doing part of the live training? How are the students involved?
That's a great question. We have the two-time award-winning Bartenders Guild. My great colleague, Christina Mogul, she works directly with me. She oversees all of these student-driven organizations. Now, remember, we have them in the classroom, and so those are for credit, but it's these student organizations, Evan, that have taken on their own new life and their own new world of their own. We tap into them, so they design, say, the menu for Cecilia, our AI robot. They just did all that design. For the heat this weekend, they design all that. Do we give them feedback? Do they get feedback from brand ambassadors or the director of advocacy at Bacardi? Absolutely, right? But now this comfort zone, and we want them out front. We want them to be comfortable enough to say, and if it doesn't work, guess what? Now we have the real-time data for the robot example, but even in the classroom. So they have weekly meetings, they drive them, they do it all. We don't do that, so that's amazing. So the student portion is critical. As well as a official internship program where our first cohort of 6 interns for Bacardi North America, they hired 3 of them right on the spot. And the only reason why the other 3 weren't hired is they had to come back to school to finish their degree. So it is, again, they're getting it, and it works. And I think we're going to be doubling down again on that internship program and putting even more students into it, because the value is there when they're leaving our program at FIU and going to take jobs. Wow, that is the perfect match made in heaven.
Incredibly fascinating. I think our learners have learned a lot from you, but we get to get one more thing from you.
Sure, absolutely.
Always end the show with, if you had one tip to share with all our listeners, what would your one tip be?
The one tip, it is to over communicate and over deliver. In the past 2 years, I've taken this to new strides, because people working virtually, what do you got to do? Over communicate, over communicate, over communicate. And then, of course, with partnerships such as we do with Bacardi North America, or any partnership it comes to matter, over deliver, make them want more, and using that. But I've been using that with students. I've been using that with my colleagues I work with. I put together bi-weekly visual reports for everyone. I want to make sure everyone knows exactly what we're doing and how we're going to get there. And then what do? We over deliver upon it. Just the success of Cecilia alone, but better yet, the success of the program as itself has gone a long way. And the one little one to add to that too is, because this is a perfect audience to it, never forget the importance of a mentor. I'm sure many of your guests have said that before, but having a mentor is, just to have someone you can kind of have a beer with and crack a beer and say, hey, will this work? Is always critical as well. So over communicate, over deliver, and don't forget about a mentor. How's that, Evan?
Great tips, and wise to live by.
Yeah.
A lot, it's interesting. A lot of people under communicate because they don't want to be a bother. And I think it's a massive mistake in thinking. I think people appreciate getting updated and appreciate knowing what's going on. And I think a lot of people under communicate and under deliver. So very good tip. I want to thank my sponsors again, C-Suite TV and C-Suite Radio. Appreciate them. I appreciate all of our listeners. And Brian, of course, I want to appreciate you. Everyone have a great day.
Training Unleashed is brought to you by Tortal Training, specializing in e-learning and interactive online training solutions for corporate, government, nonprofit, and franchise organizations. Tortal makes effective training easier. Just go to tortal.net to gain access to real-world tools that can make a difference. That's tortal.net, Tortal, tortal.net.